Well, it's been a while since we've had our good friend Russ Fulcher with us here at KIDO Talk Radio. And welcome back, sir.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on, Kevin.
Let's talk about the big news coming out yesterday. The Club for Growth endorsing your race for Congress, endorsing you for the first CD. What does that mean for the people here in Idaho, and what does this mean for the campaigns?
I was ecstatic over that, and full disclosure, I had lobbied for that. I mean, this is a group that has a really good history of engaging with and supporting those candidaes who are that kind of that free enterprise, limited government model. That's what they do. And when they get behind somebody, they get behind them in a big way. And so this was a really, really good one. I think it gives our campaign a tremendous boost and puts us in a situation to where we're going to be tough to beat in this next race. And so very excited about it.
How do you see the race playing out? Now you've got Representative Perry, and she joined us a couple weeks ago. Announcing her bid. You've got yourself, Mr. Leroy, Representative Malik, Michael Snyder, Nick Henderson. I think I'm happy that I can remember everybody. But what does this? What did you envision a crowded field when you decided to run for Congress?
Not this crowded, no. But clearly, what that means is anyone in this race has got to be able to distinguish himself and articulate what their positions are, what they intend to do, and get the confidence built within the constituency that, yep, we can actually do this. This is a year-plus long job interview, Kevin.
Sure.
And the resumes keep rolling in on the desk, so we got a lot of communicating to do.
Well, let's talk a little bit about this. You have been getting to know the state. Now you're getting to know the 1st Congressional District. What's it like to go into these towns? Because, again, we know you here in Ada and Canyon County. You've been elected, reelected. You've been a newsmaker, a public servant. Now you're going to these towns. You know Idaho, but, I mean, some of these places are, I don't want to say off the beaten path, but...
off the beaten path.
Right. When you go in and you meet these folks and say, this is what I'm going to bring to Congress, can you share with us that experience?
Learn something every time, Kevin. I got 1,000 different stories. And there is I've maybe used this analogy on your show before, but if you ever played any kind of high school or college sports, you probably had to go to the weight room, and just part of it was tough, but you got stronger. And I liken that to the campaign. When you're out in every nook and cranny of this state, it's not easy to do. It's not easy to get to certain places. It's not easy to be away from home that much, but you get stronger, you get smarter, and you meet people that you never would meet any other way. And I know this may sound like it's a patronizing statement, but my goodness, I'm so impressed with the people. We have so many good people in this state, and every one of them have a story, and they all have an issue, and they all show up because they've got something with government that they want to get help with or get assistance with. And fabulous experience, not easy though.
Indeed. Russ Fulcher joining us, 580-5436, 580-KID if you have a question. Let's talk a little bit about Congress right now, the GOP tax reform going through. People are very critical of Congress. Congress does not get the highest job approval ratings. Now, you're a great guy. Why do you want to be a part of that body? I mean, it's like the Bad News Bears, apparently.
Yeah, because I probably am not good enough to be a talk radio host. Maybe that's it. Some of us are kind of pointed to do different things, and I thoroughly enjoyed my years in the legislature, and this is a kind of a continuation of that if we're successful with it. I think we're living in the most interesting time in history, and I realize that there's a lot of turmoil. I realize there's a lot of unpopularity that comes with that role. However, anytime you've got a situation like that, you've got an equal amount of opportunity. And there were those who cared enough about you and I and those who were our predecessors who were willing to do that and take whatever criticism and make whatever sacrifice to do that. And you know what? I need to be willing to do the same thing. And I do believe I've got a skill set that fits that model. And if I can use that to try to have a positive influence, then I want to do that, Kevin. And it's gratifying. It's frustrating, but it's gratifying, and I like that gratification.
What about the major issue for you when people are talking to you at these forums and such? Is it national defense? Is it the budget? What is your signature issue? And is it too soon to ask you that?
Well, it's. I'm not sure if I have a signature issue, but it's got to be the federal overreach. It's got to be the federal dependence. It's got to be the amount of influence that Washington, D.C. has over every single life in Idaho, whether it be in Salmon or Boise or Meridian or Rigby or Coeur d'Alene or wherever. And when we were talking briefly about those people that I'd meet at all these different parts, every one of them have a story, and most of the time it relates to some kind of federal mandate, federal overreach, federal influence that they're trying to either reduce or get rid of. And so it would have to be that federal overreach. The amount of power that Washington, D.C. has over every single life in the state of Idaho.
Russ Fulcher joining us here as we continue on KIDO Talk Radio. We take a look at the president and the impact he's had, changing direction from President Obama, former President Obama. How do you see his influence? Of course, the mainstream media, very critical of him, yet he is bringing about real change. How do you think the president is viewed here in Idaho when you're on the trail?
Insightful question, and we could probably talk for for an hour on that. But this president's had a monumental impact. I was in Washington, D.C. about a couple of weeks ago, and you think we're talking about it here. I can tell you they're talking about it there. They're talking about it in the halls of the Capitol. They're talking about it in the House and Senate office buildings. So unconventional, so relentless in driving an agenda, and not afraid to speak what's on his mind. And admittedly, I have a totally different style, okay? But
no, I thought your style was quite similar to the president.
I have a different style, I believe, but he has definitely shaken things up. And I'll tell you, I would say the vast majority of Idahoans that I meet on the trail support this president. They may not support every single thing that he says and does, but on large scale, they support the fact that he's back there and he's turning the place upside down.
Now, for you, going to Washington, meeting with folks, and again, you've been a public servant for years here at the state level. What would it? I mean, everybody says every little boy and girl now grows up wishing, wanting to be president. They, but seeing the rotunda, meeting with these folks, as a person, Russ Fulcher, as citizen Russ Fulcher, was that a humbling experience to go into the halls of power? You're obviously you're sacrificing for this, but to see these institutions, to see these folks, what was that like for you?
It is, and it's interesting you bring that up. As you know, I was in the Idaho legislature for 10 years. I never got over that there. So when you walk in that Capitol building in Boise, Idaho, at least for me, the hair stands up on the back of my neck every time. Because I know of those who were there before. I know those who are there now who really had an influence. You walk into the United States Capitol, it's the same thing. You know that there were those that were there ahead of you because their statues are all over the place, for one thing. But it's a very, very humbling thing to know that maybe, just maybe, you can have an impact, and that you're setting the stage for your children or your grandchildren, and trying to be honorable in promoting a society that our founders established for us. So it is an honor, and I hope to be able to remind people that it really is an honor to serve, and there are those of us who are trying to do it for the right reasons.
The state of conservatism today, where are we?
I would say that it is increasing, and it is kind of merging with kind of the libertarian mindset. It's a laissez-faire, hands-off type of mentality that seems to be growing out there. A lot of the youth, I talked to a lot of the youth in high schools and on college campuses, and there seems to be this trend of, all right, there's a frustration with government. How about you just leave us alone? and so I would say that it's growing, but there seems to be kind of a merging, if you will, with kind of the libertarian / Republican / conservative type mindset.
Russ Fulcher joining us here. Kevin Miller in the morning, 580-5436, 580-KIDO if you have a question. One thing, though, that is a challenge, we talk about domestic issues, but when you're in Congress, obviously there might be that vote to go to war, that vote to authorize actions. Have you been boning up on, studying up on North Korea and others? It seems every other week North Korea is in the news.
Yeah, and that's something, quite honestly, that I do have to get more and more fluent with, and I'm trying to do that. If you consider the number of responsibilities that federal leaders have, one of their rightful roles is a protector of this nation and a protector of our people. And so to the extent I can get educated and be knowledgeable before making some of those decisions, and obviously I've got to do that. But we haven't had to, as most states, you don't have those types of decisions you have to make for the most part. But we're in a brave new world now, and not only is it the responsibility of the federal government, but we've got a lot of people outside our borders and even some in our borders who would like to do harm to us. So pretty important.
More coming up with Russ Fulcher next. You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. And welcome back. Kevin Miller in the morning here. Our great friend, Senator Russ Fulcher, former senator, but you have that title forever. Is that how that works?
Yeah, I think so, but Russ works just fine.
All right.
So I'm perfectly good with that. But yeah, that's kind of the tradition, as It kind of sticks with you.
Speaking of sticking with you here, big event this Friday, Idaho Chooses Life. You've been there for years. You've spoken at Idaho Chooses Life at Eagle Christian Church. For more information, idahochooseslife.org. What does that event mean to you, whether you're a candidate or an activist or someone who cares about the life issue?
Well, we talked just in the last segment very briefly about the importance of protecting and protecting citizens from harm in our nation, and ultimately that's protection of life. And there simply is no greater issue for me. And when I was in the legislature, that was front and center for me for 10 years. And privilege of getting the award Friend for Life from Idaho Chooses Life and other pro-life groups. But if you got to look in your soul and just evaluate what does my purpose mean here, and how am I going to try to use whatever God gave me for good. And at least in my estimation, there is no higher calling than to protect life. And so that's what Friday evening's about. And I appreciate you being willing to participate with that, too, and it's a wonderful cause.
I just sit there and it is so family-friendly, and it is so Idaho. It's inspiring to be there.
Yeah, and like you say, you're going to see 80-year-olds sitting with 8-month-olds.
Right.
And that is Idaho. That's what it's about. And ultimately, the whole idea is to elevate the cause of life, not just life in the womb, but that end of life scenario, where the respect for the living and our culture, and promoting an entire culture of life.
Let's get you to traffic and weather together at KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Dave. And there we go. And that's really what it's about. Our great friend Senator Fulcher with us, or as he likes to call himself, Russ. That is his first name. Let's go to the phones. We'll go to Liberal Steve. And Liberal Steve, now I know you don't have headphones, but we'll just let Liberal Steve speak, and then we'll let Russ Fulcher respond. Go ahead, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Fulcher. I'm not in your district over there in the Meridian area, but if you do get in as a congressman, the small town coffee shops and stuff that I visit a couple times a week and sit around and talk with, I'm 66 years old, and talk with the older folks, what they're most concerned with, and I am myself also, I'm not hurting as bad as a lot of them are, but Social Security is a fixed income. And myself, I'm totally solvent, no mortgages or anything, but a lot of these people are still paying monthly mortgages along with their power bills, and when they go on the Medicare, all of a sudden their Medicare check they get a deduction for insurance. So let's just throw a number out. Let's say they're getting $1,600 a month. All of a sudden they're down to $1,400, and then today they have to have a supplement with it, and that costs anywhere from another $40 to $120. So that's money out of their pocket that they can't make their mortgage payments with. They got to put it towards power to stay warm, and they're hurting on meals anyway because they're not as active. And in Congress, would you fight for the Idahoans that have worked so hard all their lives? A lot of these people never missed a day of work, raised families and such, and now they're hurting. They give them a check, and then they take the money out. Why can't that just be handled? All the medical handled through Medicare.
Good.
That's a good question, and thank you for that, Steve. And the answer
Thanks.
is yes. We've made commitments to our previous generations, and those commitments need to be honored. The question for me immediately becomes, okay, what's the economic engine to be able to do that? Because in the process of making those commitments, we made a lot of other commitments to a lot of other people, and we're carrying $20 trillion worth of debt. So ultimately, does that need to be reevaluated? Absolutely. But by the same token, you get yourself out of that by putting your economy in a situation where you can turbocharge it. And so that's a conversation for another day. Yes, we got to hold those commitments. B, we've got to reevaluate future commitments on how we do that. C, we have to pay off our bills by turbocharging the economy. So it's kind of a full circle, complicated conversation. But I think you bring up a very good point, and I thank you for raising the question.
And we go back to the phones. Liberty Linda joins us now with Russ Fulcher at KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Liberty Linda.
Hey, Russ. I believe everything that Russ has said this morning. I just truly believe that he wants to do his very best for, number one, the people of Idaho, the state of Idaho, and for our beautiful United States. And I do have a slogan for him. Russ Fulcher, a man for the people. How do you like that?
Oh, Linda, you always seem to say just the right thing at the right time. And if nothing else, you make me feel good. So thank you for that. And but I can tell you, to the best of my human ability, I do feel that way. I do get gratification from helping people, and so I think that comes across. I think it came across within the 10 years that I was in the legislature, and by the same token, that's where we're going. That's why we're doing it. And so just thank you for that word of encouragement.
Well, and I truly mean it. I really believe that you are a man for the people, and you just feel in your heart that you want to do good. So anyway, I just wanted to call in and wish you the best, Russ, and everything. And just go out there and do your best. And I know it's in your heart. So anyway, I'm 100% behind you.
Thank you, Liberty Linda. We appreciate it. Russ Fulcher, our guest here, Kevin Miller in the morning at KIDO Talk Radio. We'll take a few more phone calls as we roll along at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Now, back to what Liberal Steve was talking about, the idea of, the entitlement program, Social Security, what's going to need to be done to save these programs.
Yeah, and Kevin, it is such a complicated scenario, and it's evolved over the course of decades. And a lot of the entitlement programs have a direct link to immigration policy and how that is enforced and employed. And so the next generation, as it stands right now, is inheriting about $20 trillion worth of debt, and that's a mammoth figure. That said, there is definitely a pathway out. And I believe there's a mathematical pathway that allows us to uphold some of those commitments that Liberal Steve was talking about, and by the same token, put our next generation in a position where they're not packing all that debt. It does have to do with our economic growth. It does have to do with keeping our energy and growing our energy industry within our own borders. It does have to do with reducing the regulatory burden so that our businesses can grow. And those are all principles that I'm schooled in. Those are all principles that I believe in. And I think there's good news.
And quickly, Tom, you've got about 30 seconds here at KIDO Talk Radio for Russ Fulcher, and then we'll give Russ 30 seconds to answer. So if you could make it quick, please.
Yes, I wanted to ask Russ to commit for his issue on taxes. My taxes raised another $1,200 this year. I've got 2 rentals. I try to keep the rent low for these people, and I just got to keep raising rent on them just to cover the taxes. I paid $7,000 last year in Ada County taxes, and this year I paid $8,300. And I'm getting sick and tired of being taxed out of my houses. What can he do to stop the counties from taxing us so much? They literally cash my check within 24 hours. They're great with cashing checks, and that's about it.
Okay, Tom, we'll hang up and let Russ answer your question. Go ahead, sir.
And by the way, I'm in the exact same boat, Tom. I just got my tax bill a couple of days ago, and I'm experiencing the same thing. That's why we've got levels of government. We've got state, we've got local, and we've got federal. And you and I are struggling with the local implications of that. And so my objective would be the same at the federal level as it was at the state level, and that's just to try to promote every single philosophical policy that I can that is a reduction of the burden and a reduction of those tax levels. That also means that some of the services may have to be curbed, and so get involved with those county commissioners and local officials and just try to encourage them. And look, maybe we can do just a tad bit less taxes.
Now, can we ask you to hang out for a little while?
Yeah.
Okay, we've got a report from Eben Brown, but all of a sudden it takes people a while to warm up, so we've got some people that want to talk to Russ Fulcher. Russ will join us continuing on here, plus Eben Brown. You're listening to Kevin Miller at KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Maggie. And coming up, more with our friend Russ Fulcher. By the way, I don't know why Tea Party Bob is emailing me questions. He can call in like everybody else, but he is Tea Party Bob. Before we get back to Russ, let's go to Eben Brown, who will join us live from Miami. Eben, good to have you with us.
Good morning.
So it looks like the FBI is looking at a record number of people buying guns on Black Friday. I guess that's good for the gun industry.
Well, we have a record number of background checks being performed on Black Friday, which would then allow us to think that a similar number of firearms are being sold. This past Black Friday, 203,086, 203,086 background checks performed, and that's a little less than a 10% increase over last year, which was 185,713. So really like about an 18,000 or so number difference in the number of background checks performed last Black Friday to this Black Friday. And to put that in perspective, Black Friday 2015 was 185,345. So from 2015 to 2016, the increase was a little less than 400. And the increase between 2016 and 2017 is about 18,000.
Well, I suppose that's good news that, more people are getting checked and to make sure that everybody's good to go when they buy their weapons.
Well, it means more people were going out and buying on a single day, and that's good for retail sales, obviously, on a Black Friday, and certainly the retailers in the firearms industry are happy about that. There were also big deals on firearms in the sporting goods mega chains like Bass Pro Shop and Cabela's, which are now actually one company, but a lot of big deals on those there as well. So that probably all contributed to it. As far as the exact number of firearms sold, we won't have that.
Eben Brown, we appreciate you. Thank you, sir.
You got it.
All right, Eben Brown there. Insightful story on Second Amendment gun sales on Black Friday. I mean, I got my TV, my emails for the TV, for the computers, for just about everything. I don't know. I guess you have to be on the Cabela's list, Russ, to get the buy one get one free gun or something like that. But it's interesting. I never even thought about a Black Friday special for a gun, for a firearm.
Yeah, and so much. There's so much of that, and there's also so many people that are looking on purchasing online. Not necessarily guns in that case, but
sure.
The whole online shift, and frankly, I'm one of them. Sometimes it's just easier to go online than it is to brave the crowds.
Let's go to the phones here for Russ Fulcher, KIDO Talk Radio. We go to Trudy in Boise on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Trudy.
Hi. Russ, are you saying are you lumping Social Security and with entitlement programs?
No, it's part of the calculus when it comes to how we try to balance a budget, how we try to finance everything. We've got a lot of commitments that are out there through either the Social Security channels or some sort of entitlement, and all of that has to be rolled up on the balance sheet and measured out. And so when I talk about that issue, I'm talking about a grander scale of what's the best way to finance what we have, and how do we make our commitments, how do we keep our commitments, and at the same time not pass on a ton of debt to our children.
Right, I agree. I don't think it is an entitlement. I agree with what Liberal Steve was saying to the older population, and I would really resent knowing that you think or anybody thinks that Social Security is entitlement. And I realize things have to be looked at and maybe changed for younger generations, but there's a lot that could be done with entitlement programs and debt that we have that could be cut, and they're not addressing those types of things. So
Trudy, I can use the counsel. So RussFulcher.com. Seriously, if you've got some ideas and that kind of thing, I'm always open to wise counsel, and I hope that you'll share it with me.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Trudy.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. KIDO Talk Radio. Russ Fulcher with us at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Let's go to Heavyweight Hank in Boise for Russ Fulcher. Good morning,
Okay.
Hank.
Good morning. I might point out that I think that Russ Fulcher is the best man to carry on the direction that Congressman Labrador is going, and definitely we need more people like him up there in Congress. And my question to Mr. Fulcher is this: have you seen any indication that IACI or the governor is going to intervene in this congressional race? I just think the appearance of Christy Perry in there kind of suggests that might be the case.
Well, Hank, first of all, thank you for the compliment. That makes me feel good, and I appreciate you saying that. The short answer to your question is I really don't know, and I won't say that I don't care, because I do, but I have to continue on the path that we're on. We've charted a course with this campaign. As we talked about just a little bit earlier, we got a huge boost yesterday with support from Club for Growth and endorsement there. And, it's the people of Idaho who are going to make this call. We're in front of them every single week. And I don't know what some of the folks that are currently in office are going to do, but I just have to stay the course, and I have to be me, and I have to stand for what I believe. And I think if we do that, it'll work out okay. And once again, I want to thank you for the compliment.
Well, you certainly deserve it.
Thank you, sir.
All right, Hank, we appreciate it. Let's go back to the phones. We go to Tom in Nampa for Russ Fulcher at KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Tom.
Oh, good morning. Say, you've expressed concern about passing on a larger, ever-growing national debt. How in the world can you be for a tax cut when the recent deficit for last year was $700 billion? And this tax cut is just going to do nothing but add more to the deficit. And I don't buy the notion that you get more out of taxing less. Look what happened to Kansas. So it's ridiculous. It's just going to be the economy doesn't need turbocharging. It's doing just fine right now. It's getting better every month.
Yeah, Tom, we've probably got a philosophical difference there. My belief is that if I let you keep more of your money, you're going to take that money and you're going to spend it at the grocery store, or you're going to invest it, or you're going to cycle it through the economy again. And I think that's proven itself over the course of time. And so I function on the theory that if we keep those dollars with the people, you're smarter at spending them for the most part than government officials are.
Well, the only trouble is my taxes are going to go up because I itemize, and they're going to take away my personal exemption. They're going to raise the lower tax rate from 10 to 12. They're going to lower the higher one from 39 to 35. I don't even get near that. They're not going to let me take my state income tax off. So I'm going to end up paying more. So some corporation is getting to pay less. So I don't see where it's keeping any more money in my pocket.
Well, hopefully that's
and I'm
not.
a
Hopefully,
Republican too, by the way.
yeah. Hopefully that's not the case. As you know, that bill's not solidified yet. It's going to likely to go to conference committee, and so we'll get some kind of a compromise between the House version and the Senate version. But it's my hope, and I'm not there obviously right now, but it's my hope, and it would be my effort to try to reverse exactly what you're talking about, because I don't think that helps. If we take your taxes up, I think it
just
just
do with the
adds to the
deficit, though. It keeps going up.
Well, that's a good point. If elected, that is a huge challenge. How do we bring in? And we talked about this with Senator Crapo all the time. The issue of this deficit and how much of our money is going to debt service. You as a businessman, you understand
no question.
that. So, if you were all of a sudden the Speaker of the House, the President, and the Majority Leader in the Senate, how do we solve this issue that Tom brings up?
It is a fascinating and a complex scenario. But again, just philosophically, I believe that if we do reduce that burden and we do allow people to keep more of what they earn, they will, in one form or another, cycle that back into the economy, and that just improves things. It creates jobs. It creates growth. The other thing that can be done is you couple that with some of your trade policy or with your business policy. We've got industries. We've got economic engines that we're not fully exploiting within this nation. Energy is a prime example, and it's one of those things that we've got an abundance of. And if we wisely use that and we use those jobs internally and we consume that internally rather than importing it, that's a huge impact on our economic picture. So we've got to create growth. We've got to reform some of the entitlement issues that we've got, and we've got to allow people to make more decisions with their own money as opposed to the government doing it for them.
Tom, thank you for the call. 580-5436, 580-KIDO, if you'd like to talk to Russ Fulcher. In addition to that, we'll talk about the opioid crisis next. You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. And we continue on. Russ Fulcher joining us here. So we have a question from the beloved sweet prince of the Treasure Valley. I guess he's saving his phone call for later in the program. That is Tea Party Bob. What can you do as a congressman to help Congress, to help the country with this opioid crisis that continues to take victim after victim?
Well, we've got a system in place that is kind of skewed towards pharmaceuticals, and there's alternatives to that. And if we and sometimes, believe me, I believe in traditional medical care. I believe in alternative care methods. I believe that God gave us a brain, and we have to be able to use that equally. But our legal system, our insurance system, is often skewed towards the more traditional type health care, which unfortunately sometimes encourages more opioid use and more opioid prescriptions. And so by changing some of that legal foundation so that there are other alternatives that are equally considered and rewarded, primary health and alternative care, then I think that would go a long way into reducing some of those addictions and reducing some of the fallout of those addictions. So the system needs to change, Kevin.
Let me go back to civilian Russ Fulcher for a minute, by the way. You've had a career in commercial real estate. You've met with people before that. You were involved in Micron. So you understand the skinny here, the DNA of the Treasure Valley.
Yes.
What do you make of just the influx of people coming in? Does it rival 2007 when the unemployment rate, I think, was like 2.5% or something of that matter, where we have subdivisions that were empty now being full, where we have traffic all of a sudden? I don't know if that's progress. But as someone who has dealt with Micron, who has dealt with these big corporations coming in, who people say, well, I'd like to take a look at the Treasure Valley, and you're meeting with them on and off. What do you make of just the influx of the massive population increase that we're having?
Well, first of all, make no mistake, this is a good place to be.
Right.
Okay, and people realize that. So we get a lot of influx, not just in the Treasure Valley, but all over the state, from people coming from California, people coming from Washington State, Oregon. And that's because it's a good place to be. And comparatively speaking, things are reasonably good. However, I need to balance that by saying things are not always as they seem. We have an incredibly low unemployment rate, but we also have a very high percentage of people on public assistance. In other words, we might have a lot of jobs, but those jobs don't necessarily pay all the bills. And so there's a lot of room for improvement. I'm very thankful. Idaho is kind of like that, Ronald Reagan would say, the great natural athlete. It's got all the tools. It's got the education system. It's got the natural resources. It's got the space, all those components. It's got the people, very good people. But we need to be wiser about how we manage it. And, I've used this analogy before too, Kevin, but some of our elected officials have forgotten what it's like. Do I go to the grocery store or the gas pump this week because I can't afford to do both? And that's the type of thing that I want to change, that mentality to the best of my ability. And I want to change that culture to one that's one of service, to try and encourage and empower people.
Traffic and weather together, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Dave. And we're back with Russ Fulcher here. Let's go to Greg in Boise on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Greg.
Good morning, gentlemen. Hey, I just wanted to weigh in. Russ was alluding to alternatives, and I know the larger body of your listening audience would bristle at the sound of someone mentioning Obamacare, but this issue was partially addressed in there. There's a paragraph 300GG that disallows provider discrimination. But in Idaho and a few other states, our insurance commission isn't enforcing that paragraph. And so what we've done is created an economic barrier to free choice in healthcare. And so, for instance, probably a lot of your listeners know that I'm a chiropractor, but people will have a limited chiropractic benefit for the exact same condition compared to the benefit they have medically. And given a level playing field, I, of course, might seem a little biased, but given a level playing field, we aren't the ones creating an opioid epidemic in the country. We have a young man just started his wrestling this year. Prior to our office this year, he had spent $7,000 towards his deductible medically. And within a month and $300 or $400 of care, he's now re-entered his wrestling program and had far more resolution than thousands and thousands of dollars medical care could buy over many months. And so we need to work to enforce that paragraph, that non-discrimination paragraph. And for those listeners that are of that inclination to utilize cheap, safe, non-drug alternatives, they need to contact our insurance commissioner and help him understand how important it is to enforce the non-discrimination paragraph so that people have equal choice to receive that kind of care. Now, the larger body of the Obamacare has been a disaster.
Now, do you have a question for Russ, Dr. Furch?
Well, I think I would be interested in Russ's opinion on that. I know I've heard Russ interviewed with Bob on his show.
Well, okay, why don't let's ask Russ the question, because we've only got a couple seconds here. Russ?
Greg, thank you, first of all, for the testimony. I learned something just from you there, so thank you for that. But it goes back to one of those premise that, you know what, sometimes you just kind of have to take control of your own destiny here. And that was one of my struggles with Obamacare at the state level. I always felt like we had the ability with our own state to create our own system, or at least our own alternatives to that system. And I think what Greg's just saying there is substantiating that. The current law is not being enforced, but we have the ability internally to enforce it right here in our own state. So once again, thank you, Greg, for the education, and that's a reminder. And I agree with you. Let's get with the insurance commissioner. Let's get with our local legislators, and let's get things changed for the better.
Greg? I guess he's gone. Russ Fulcher joining us here. If people want more information, what can they do?
Oh, I'm easy to find. Kevin. I'm really easy to find. I'm all over the place, but russfulcher.com is probably the best way to do it. There's email links. There's a place where you can leave suggestions and provide counsel, and I always need counsel. So that'd be a great way to do it.
Well, we appreciate you coming in. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for having me on, Kevin.
KIDO Talk Radio, Fox News next. Stay here. Stay informed. Good morning.